Okay, so for this chapter, we're really looking at communication. Well, I should say overall, assistive technology and communication in the area of literacy and communication overall for very young children. And obviously, the sooner we can start children that rely on assistive technology and communication devices, the earlier we can get them started on it, the better. So we need to have a sense of what is communication. Communication involves two people at minimum, a sender and a receiver. And as the communication is going back and forth, there's feedback, and that could be verbal feedback, it could be gestural or facial feedback as well. Communication, when it's being developed, a lot of times it may be viewed as unintentional, but there's a lot of research in that a baby's cry is intentional. And so what responsive caregivers will do is read intentionality into things, even then, though we're not 100% sure what that cry might mean, although many parents will tell you they can distinguish between different types of cries. But in any event, there's a reciprocal interaction that needs to take place. And so factors that promote quality communication, developmentally appropriate communication, is a child's ability to see and hear and touch things, to learn from experience so that they can talk about them, to smell things, to move around, and to problem solve. But there needs to be an environment that is competent, so competent communicators responding and interacting. It requires opportunity. So if you can think about a young child who has, a significant physical disability or visual impairment or deafness or any of the disabilities that impact communication, that there's going to be potential problems that we need to address, and so we need interactions. We need competent partners. We need the ability to make choices. We have to be able to initiate communication as well, not just respond to it when someone asks us a question or tells us to point to a particular icon on a device. It has to be a consistent, deliberate back and forth. The challenges to early communication for students is that for children, there could be significant social, cognitive, motor, and sensory disabilities that are going to hinder their independence and interaction with caregivers, teachers, interaction with the environment. And thus, there's going to be potential delays in developing communication overall, particularly language, which involves a shared symbol system. So we need to understand the difference between speech, language, and communication. Communication is very broad, and it doesn't involve necessarily a symbol system. But when we talk about language, that's a rule-governed system. Technology tools that support early communication are such things as switches. So we can certainly just go to Staples and buy a switch, but we need to know how to potentially hook it up to another device as well. But in any event, switches allow for direct instruction, for cause and effect learning. Communication is cause and effect. Cognition involves cause and effect. We need to be able to for the child to achieve positive interactions with his or her environment and to teach choice making. So there's some very, very simple augmentative and alternative communication devices. There's single message communication devices. So we can actually use a switch to access some type of talking device where we can program in questions for the child, such as, does anyone want to play a game with me? Will someone read me a story? And or I need help. So there's all different types of switches. This is just an example. The photo shows an example of one. But there are certainly devices that the child can direct select and push. There are devices that the child can use any muscle within his or her body There's certainly light, ultra light sensitive switches that the child can have some type of light attached to their body, vibration, breathing switches. There's all different types of switches, and we need to be working with OTs and PTs and speech language pathologists to identify ways in which the child can access communication devices, because a lot of children will not be able to just use their fingers to push something. And so we need to, as this slide points out, rely on the team. And that particular photo, and this photo as well, showed a child accessing a switch to play, and so connected to a toy, a battery-operated toy. But we need to make sure we're addressing a number of things. The child's positioning, their motor, where do they have access, where can they move? Maybe it's an elbow that they use to hit a switch. The type of switch, this one in this photo is really, really large, and so this child might need something large. Maybe their fine motor skills are not are delayed, or are actually not accessible to the child. We need to have instruction in switches, and it involves a team. We want the simplest solution. We want to keep data, and we want to make sure we're looking for student feedback. When we talk about literacy, certainly we're talking about emergent. Okay, so we know that as at some point the child will move to literacy skills and reading to gain knowledge, but in the early years we're talking about emergent. So we want to make sure that the child has access to the ability to browse through books, respond to comprehension questions about what they're looking at and reading, and listening to read alouds. Eventually they'll get to the point where they need to read for content. So what are some obstacles to literacy? Certainly if a child has severe disabilities, we need to be addressing any level of severe disability. Communication will be delayed. There might be minimal access, and this is where we come in. We need to make sure that the child doesn't have problems with accessing reading and writing activities, and there may be limited access to communicate through reading and writing. So there are certainly assistive technology devices that help us to promote literacy skills. Again, a number of switches. We need to know about those. Our one-step communicators, which we'll learn about more in Chapter 11. There's low-tech adaptations, talking books, books on MP3, there's podcasts. There's a lot of early literacy websites and apps with Bluetooth switches. I know that in the classroom, someone very close to me, my husband uses a lot of talking books, or used, I should say. He taught autistic support for many, many years. And so the children, certainly many of them in his class, could simply access the app and the talking book. We need to be looking at interactive literacy-based programs, graphic and story-making apps, and authoring apps as well. So we're not just talking about reading, but we're also talking about writing as well. So looking at interactive literacy-based, that's converting popular children's books to multimedia display. So the text will be read aloud, certainly including a lot of sound effects, interactive. That's where I love the talking books on the computers, and allowing children to control timing and repetition of words and sentences. And again, children may need switches to do this. Graphic story-making apps will enable the children to create pictures and stories of their own design, respond to various access methods such as touchscreens, which are particularly beneficial. There's a variety of pictures, colors, sounds, music, and video clips that can be added, and this empowers students who cannot write or color in traditional ways. We need to look at authoring. Story-making apps enable parents and teachers to create interactive stories, and these are some examples: Pictello, Clicker Books, Microsoft PowerPoint, and features such as text-to-speech, which are highly customizable, and you can insert the child's photo, I should say. There are low-tech solutions for students who cannot use a pencil or a keyboard, and you can use partner-assisted scanning as well. So I would say that the low-tech are going to allow you to reuse, laminate, but initially setting up a lot of work, but then you'll have them for time to come as the child moves forward. All children, regardless of the severity of their disabilities, can communicate, and we need to provide opportunities and supportive environments to help them to communicate.